What is up, guys? My name is Rob Donaldson, and welcome back to a new video. It's a different style of video, and I'm happy to be making it. I posted yesterday on Twitter just kind of asking you guys if you would be receptive to this style of video, and, you know, to my surprise, a lot of you guys were, and I really appreciate that, and certainly if you guys want it, I can do it for all the major conferences. College football is a blast, and I like talking about it. Obviously, my moniker, if you will, Rob DFB, the FB part at the very end stands for football. This is how my YouTube channel kind of got its start, in that college football, NFL draft space. And, you know, with the season barreling down on us, and it's poised to be a unique one, I'm excited to talk about it. And from a betting standpoint, I can do this for all the major conferences, and that currently is the plan. We're going to start off with the Big Ten today, and, you know, from a betting standpoint, when you're looking at an entire conference, I think the most important thing is measuring perception, and really in sports betting in general, I think measuring perception is the most valuable tool in our bag. If you think a team could hit, say, 6 wins, and the rest of the betting public and the quote-unquote experts and analysts are taking them to only win 3 or 4, boom. You just carved out a wide margin of inherent value that you can lean on using your analysis as a handicapper. And obviously in sports betting, the great equalizer is always going to be that spread, right? Because you don't have to be 8-0 to be 8-0 ATS. You can be 0-8 and be 8-0 ATS, or 6-2, or 5-3, or 7-1. And man, all you have to really do is kind of bank on your team playing within that range, not really playing to win. That's just kind of that nice little benefit if you are chasing a money line with plus money. But as a simplistic concept, I still feel like a lot of people don't really grasp it. You know, a lot of people will take the best teams in every single matchup to blow out an inferior opponent and then be surprised when it's a 5-point game and a plus 5.5 spread. You know, it's just one of those things that I feel like a lot of people really struggle with, especially in a sport like football where a lot of name value, a lot of brand value can be at play. So let's start there with the Big Ten. Let's outline all 18 Big Ten teams here into 4 different categories: great, good, average, bad. And based on what I've seen, I'm just going to say that this is the landscape of the perception in the Big Ten right now. You may disagree or agree on some of these teams being slotted in these categories, but we'll kind of go into depth on that moving forward. And heck, maybe you guys can throw some comments my way and say, hey, actually, I've seen a lot of people higher on this team than you, so maybe, you know, we do need to realign them. And I'm totally open to that. I think that's kind of part of the great discussion that can be had on a video like this, and I say we jump right in. All right, so in terms of how we're going to break out this video, we're going to break it into 2 different categories. We're going to be talking about our money makers, which are the teams that I think are kind of getting slept on, or, you know, the teams that we can kind of look to make some money off of. And we're also going to be talking about some teams that I would hard stay away from, not just kind of indifference, but outright fading, you know, their early season performances, or maybe just their entire season as a whole. And the first team we're going to be taking a look at here is going to be the Illinois Fighting Illini. This is year 4 under Brett Bielema, and certainly last season fell short of expectations. They had a lot of expectations being lofted on them after going 8-5, finishing second in the Big Ten West the year prior. And to go 5-7, obviously miss a bowl game, and then to finish dead last in the Big Ten West, man, you know, that's not a great spot to sit. And heading into this next year, I do feel like there's a lot of optimism behind a team that I think is getting slotted in that average tier, or just kind of that 6-6, 5-7 makeup, because I think there's more upside than that. I think there's 7-5, 8-4 type makeup with this squad. And Luke Altmaier, you know, you look at his style of play, he is a wiry, smaller QB with an arm that I think is actually somewhat live when you are kind of projecting him to maybe the next level and beyond. And so when you are looking at how he might slot into the season, I think he could be a dynamic player. You look at a lot of these second-year quarterbacks after their first full season of play. I mean, heck, look at Joe Burrow at LSU, right? He was nothing that first year, and then the second year, he posts some of the best numbers we've ever seen in college football. So Progressions obviously do happen. Do I think he's going to be Joe Burrow? Absolutely not. I think he actually projects very similarly to a Teddy Bridgewater at Louisville. I think that same kind of wiry, quick flick throwing style with a lot of touch behind it gives him a leg up when you're talking about taking advantage of corners and weak defenses early on. And so I do think Illinois is going to be able to come out of the gate strong, and I think they're going to be able to kind of put up points against a team like Kansas, in week 2. So I'm looking at Illinois as a moneymaker for us. I'm going to be tailing them quite a bit in the early goings until they show me otherwise. And year 4 under Brett Bielema, let's see it and let's make some money. All right, the next team we're going to be taking a look at here is going to be the USC Trojans. Obviously, a new member of the Big Ten coming over from the Pac-12, which is no longer, and this is one of the bigger brands in all of football, especially with Lincoln Riley at the helm. And, kind of looking at this team, and this is how I feel about the Big Ten, period. The Big Ten is a conference, I think that it's predicated on tight margin of error, attention to detail, and drive-to-drive repeatability. Both from the defensive perspective and an offensive perspective. And I do think offensively, the Trojans are a very attention to detail oriented team, but defensively, they are trash. And yeah, obviously the addition of Matt Entz is definitely an addition that I think is going to pay dividends. Going out and getting a guy from North Dakota State and that program is definitely a big time get. At the same time, I don't think that it's built into the core of the players that are currently on that roster. And for that reason, I think it's going to be a rough year 1, even if USC is able to put up points. I think kind of similarly to an Illinois team last year, I think that even though they're able to move the ball, they're going to have trouble because that volatility and, again, just playing within that tight margin of error and playing outside of it. So I'm taking USC as a team that we're going to be looking to fade and to make money on that way rather than back or support or bet on. And I really do think it's going to pay dividends early on and potentially to the end of the season, but certainly by week 7, by week 8, we may need to kind of reevaluate where this team sits. All right, for team number 3, we are going to be taking a look at the Wisconsin Badgers and that Dairy Raid offense, which has been kind of a moniker of this new Luke Fickell style that has displaced the ground and pound trap blocking style that Wisconsin teams have utilized for years and years and decades upon decades. Well, now it's a new look, and once again, this is a style of ball that in the Big Ten Conference is outside of that tight margin of error. I don't think the attention to detail is there when I watch Wisconsin, and from a repeatability standpoint, drive to drive, I don't think it's there either, and that's why they ran into troubles last season. I mean, you look at some of the wins that they didn't have, and you look at some of the losses that they did have, at Northwestern getting doubled up, at Indiana. Those are inexcusable for a team that's always played within that margin of error and always been attention to detail oriented and always controlled the game from a turnover perspective. Well, I think that's out the window now, and we kind of got to look at Wisconsin as who they are nowadays. And I don't think that this is a style that's going to be successful in the Big Ten, especially with these new additions. And I think they're going to get the brunt of it early on and often. So when we are talking about a team that I'll be looking to fade, again, it is Wisconsin. Right now, they're kind of being slotted in that, average to almost maybe even good tier, depending on who you talk to. Well, I think they are well below that into the bad tier, and that's exactly how I'm going to treat them until they show me otherwise. But hey, I am not a negative person, so let's boost up the vibes a little bit here, and let's talk about the Purdue Boilermakers. This is a team that I think a lot of people are slotting in as that bad sort of team at the bottom of the Big Ten, and they may finish in that category. I really wouldn't put it past them. I also don't know if they necessarily will be bowl eligible, but at the same time, second year under Ryan Walters and also second year with quarterback Hudson Card, who is actually playing his second full season of college football. Really, is kind of how I view it. Yes, he did get some playing time at Texas, but he was in a QB battle all of his tenure there, and last year was his first full season to kind of get the reins and take them and run. And this year, I expect, a pretty large jump from him. I think he's a marginally athletic guy. I think he's got a great arm. I think he's got a lot of touch. And when you are talking about, those composed dudes who can make that jump, you guys know how I feel about second-year quarterbacks kind of merging into that second full season of play, and I do think he's going to be able to kind of take that and spearhead it and make the most out of it. And when you are looking at that defensive side of the ball as well, they are large in the trenches. They have a lot of experience on defense. I think this is going to be a team that plays up a little bit, and whether or not, again, the win-loss record reflects it, I don't really care. I think this is going to be a team that, based on perception, is going to cover a lot of spreads, and yeah, maybe they will have a losing record midway through the season, and again, that is only going to help their perception because I think they're going to be better than that. So let's go ahead and let's back the Purdue Boilermakers, and let's make some money with that train. All right, the final team we're going to be taking a look at here are going to be the Michigan Wolverines, and obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys already kind of know where I'm going with this one, but right now they're in that great tier or that great category, and I think that there's a very good chance that they fall down to just that good tier, or if they are still a great football team, maybe that they're just kind of priced out of the betting market, and largely, obviously, that comes down to them coming off of a championship run. And when you're also looking at the coaching staff, obviously no more Jim Harbaugh, which is unfortunate for them. Great program builder, one of the best X's and O's guys in college football when he was in college football. And when you are looking at the quarterback position as well, Alex Orjai and Jack Tuttle are kind of stepping into that QB room to fill the void of J.J. McCarthy, who I think was billed as a game manager, and yes, he did manage the game extremely well, but he was also a great athlete and had a nice arm as well, kind of tied to him, and I think that elevated the Michigan offense for the last couple years, because we've seen Michigan quarterbacks just be average and them to kind of really fall flat on the surface when it really mattered, whether it was Cade McNamara or a Wilton Spate or a Jake Rudock. I think a lot of the QBs that Michigan has had over the years have kind of flatlined this team from reaching that upper tier, and J.J. McCarthy came in as that saving grace. Well, you remove that saving grace, what's going to happen? I think Michigan is going to catch a lot of overinflated lines, especially because their early season schedule features a lot of home games where I think people are going to be enamored with the big house and teams playing at Ann Arbor. Well, teams played at Ann Arbor last year. You look at the East Carolina game, Michigan couldn't cover that by 2 touchdowns. And I think that's just a very, very telling point of, inflation in the market, the way that the real world is playing out. There's inflation in the betting market with teams and big brands. And obviously Michigan, a national title winning team last year and also a big brand. And I think they're going to fall a little bit down a tier this season. So let's go ahead and fade the blue here to start the season. Maybe by the midway point, we reevaluate things based on their win-loss record, based on how they're performing. But I think in the early going, fading them is going to be paying a lot of dividends early on. And as we kind of look at a snapshot of the Big Ten, I think there are going to be a lot of teams that are just kind of I'm indifferent about, or I feel very neutral about kind of where they're sitting. And yeah, I might still bet those teams. That's certainly possible, but it would take the right line at the right time, and maybe even just a misjudgment from the preseason standpoint of how I kind of think people are viewing a certain team. But I do see upside with teams like, let's just say, Nebraska, and I even see a lot of downside with a team like Northwestern, depending on kind of the lines they're getting early on. And, those are certain things that I'm going to be taking a look at. Indiana is intriguing as well. I mean, that's a fresh new look roster under a first-year head coach, and he's bringing over everybody from that James Madison squad that was very, very impressive last season. So there are a lot of moving factors here for sure, but I wanted to highlight a few teams that I'm going to be targeting early on to try to make some money, whether that is from an outright fade of them or from a backing them perspective. And if you guys enjoyed this video and kind of want to see this style of video translated to other conferences, drop a like in this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. And as always, y'all, really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Take it easy.